Hello. Hello.
Right.
Yeah, please can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. Portia, can we start
Yeah.
for
Eugene, I can hear you,
Yeah.
but please kindly hold on for others to join.
Okay. Okay.
So we'll
And please confirm if you can see my screen as well.
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
No. We know. It's only. Oh,
It's my chest. Yeah, Pasha. Why don't we start so that those online
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this team talk on personal branding. My name is Portia, and I'm your host for this team talk section. Shall we start by a word of prayer? Our Lord and Master Jesus, we thank you for this afternoon. We commit individuals into your care that we'll have a good team talk and everybody will have a better understanding and knowledge. In Christ's name, amen. Ms. Grant will be introducing our facilitator to us. Ms. Grant, please, the floor is open for you.
Hello, everyone. So once again, Portia, thank you for the opportunity to introduce the facilitator for today. He's one of our own, a colleague that is very familiar to all of us. Sometimes we find him annoying and frustrating, especially when he delays in delivering requested creatives. His long explanations behind every design choice can be excessive until, of course, you are in a client meeting and you need to justify a concept, and then it will all make sense. I'm sure McDerrick can relate to that. But despite this, our facilitator is a digital creative assistant, brand strategist, and graphic designer. He is the mastermind behind countless eye-catching designs for clients and GMA, making people pause and take notice for all the right reasons, or even sometimes raising an eyebrow or two. Regardless, with his talent for transforming ideas into visual masterpieces, Eugene's superpower lies in turning a blank canvas into a compelling brand statement. Fellow colleagues, it is my pleasure to introduce to you this afternoon the political fanatic and creative genius, Eugene Osei.
Thank you so much. Rather an interesting intro. It's more like you took the icing of my cake, because part of my presentation was to address some of the misconceptions with regards to delayed works. But anyway, since you've already touched on it, maybe I may just have to offer some explanation. But thank you so much. Thank you for every one of you that has made time to join this session. As my abled colleague Grant eloquently established, I'm Eugene Osei, a graphic designer and brand strategist. Over here at GMA, I'm a digital creative assistant. And I've often said to myself that, okay, so I'm in GMA to do one thing that I get paid to do, which is to come up with creatives and also assist my team to grow. But what else can I do outside my stated scope of work that would add on to the growth of GMA? And I couldn't think of anything else than something that I am always passionate about, which is branding. And I said, okay, why not I, share some knowledge with my colleagues as to how to build their personal brand. So without, spending too much time on the intro, we would get to the meat of today's session. So yes, it's personal branding. So today we're going to find out what personal branding is and how we can use that to help GMA grow and of course help our careers grow as well. So before we go much deeper, I just want us to look at this quote and probably write it down because it embodies everything that we are about to discuss. It's not what you say you are that matters, it's what others say you are. And by others, Grant mischievously put it in her introduction that I deal on artwork. So that's what others say I am. So we'll leave that one there for now. So what are the objectives of this session? We are going to understand the concept of personal branding, identify our unique value proposition, learn to craft an authentic personal brand story, develop a strong online presence, maintain consistency across platforms, manage reputation and feedback, create an actionable personal brand plan. So let's demystify some statements or thoughts or opinions about branding. First of all, branding is not looks or appearance. Often when you think of branding, and I believe that branding is also one of the most misused words around. Whenever somebody dresses in a unique way or in a fashionable way, people often say, hey, without branding, oh, he's branding himself, he's branding himself. That is not branding. Dressing is dressing. Looking good is just you looking good. It's not branding. Branding is not messaging alone. What does this mean? It means that for you to say, for instance, state your company's vision or mission statement alone is not branding. Action. Say your personal relationship with people, serving people, being humble, and all that is not branding. Location. So you often hear that maybe there's a restaurant in Jowolu here that their prices are so outrageous. And you people say, well, because of their location, they brand themselves. That alone is also not branding. Association. So you find people who are friends with certain people. You often see them in photos or at certain places with certain people, or even brands affiliating with certain companies. That also is not branding. But as we go along, this demystification would make much sense to us. So what is branding? If we're saying that the aforementioned are not branding, then what is branding itself? Branding simply refers to the process of making a distinct identity for a business, product, service, or individual, designed to influence how they are perceived by the public. So the key components of branding are the name or logo, messaging, reputation, position, and position. Sorry. So you realize that it's branding. When you talk about branding, it's a composition of many parts, which is the name, messaging, reputation, and position. So it's not just the name and logo. The name and logo is not branding. So if you go back to the demystification, we can say that when you talk about looks and appearance, that can be the name and logo. So name, logo, messaging, reputation, and position is what makes up branding. So when somebody appears, gentle or calm or looks sharp in his dressing, he's not branding himself if these other key components do not come along with it. So I believe that with this simple explanation, we now understand what branding is. And we'll not just look at somebody and say, hey, this person is branding himself just because he or she speaks eloquently or looks good or is often seen with certain class of people in society. Now, what are brand archetypes? Brand archetypes are universally recognized character types or themes that brands use to shape their identity, storytelling, and marketing. So brand archetypes are generally characters or character types. So for instance, if you're watching a movie, a Hollywood movie to be precise, you have the hero, you have the villain, you have that character that cracks jokes. You also have a character that is always calm and more like the one that is always speaking wisdom. So all these characters are archetypes. They run through almost every story. So even in our local settings, you have Kokwanansi, who is a trickster. That is an archetype. So often what brands do is to embody these archetypes. So for instance, we currently have 12 main brand archetypes, which is we have the outlaw, we have the magician, we have the hero, we have the lover, we have the jester, we have the everyman, we have the caregiver, we have the ruler, we have the creator, the innocent, the sage, the explorer. Because this is not a full tutorial about brands, I will not spend too much time on it. I may just pick one or two of them, explain and give you examples so that we get a better understanding of what brand archetypes are. So if we take the sage, for instance, the sage gives off a sense of wisdom, somebody that is embodied with knowledge. So you have brands like Google, embodying that, because Google, we know that they are into information. If you look at Explorer is someone that believes that we only live once. So it's always ideal for us to go out there and explore the world. And a perfect example of a brand that embodies Explorer is Jeep and Patagonia. When it comes to caregiver, often you have foundations, embodying that. Jester, you have brands like Disney, embodying Jester. Embodying the magician. So we now move on to the introduction to personal branding. So personal branding is a unique combination of skills, experiences, values, and personality that defines how you present yourself to the world, both personally and professionally. So personal branding is similar to corporate branding, except that with personal branding, the focus is on you as an individual. So you want the world or people around you or the community in which you find yourself to see you in a certain way. So you want to look at your skills, you want to look at your experiences, your values as a person, what the things that matter to you, and your personality, and you want to group them together and communicate it to your community to create a certain perception or impression on their minds. So that is what personal branding is all about. It's the perception others have of you based on how you communicate, act, and engage across platforms, whether online, in person, or even in today's world, in the virtual world. In essence, personal brand is your unique value. What makes you different from others in your field, your reputation, how people perceive you, including your credibility, trustworthiness, and expertise, your visibility, how and where you show up, whether through social media, networking, or content creation. So like I said earlier, just like companies build brands to create customer loyalty, a strong personal brand helps individuals build trust, form relationships, and unlock opportunities. It also allows you to shape and influence how others see you in your industry or community, positioning you for career advancement, leadership roles, or business success. So in short, your personal brand is your story, consistently shared across different platforms and interactions. In this section, we are going to talk about how you identify your unique value proposition. The key objective here is to discover your strengths, your skills, and values. So over here at GMA, you may belong to a certain department, like I belong to the digital department. So I came into the digital department with graphic design. But of course, I have a colleague who is also a graphic designer, equally able as I am. So I had to define myself, identify my skills and my values. And so, whereas I focus on creative arts, where I see every artwork as a piece of art solving a problem, he also has a different direction in terms of art creation. I've identified my strengths, which is primarily in building brands, so developing logos, coming up with taglines, choosing color palettes, basically everything a brand needs. I've identified myself that this is where my strength is. So in my department now, when it comes to logo creation, it often comes to my desk and I execute them. There are tasks that come and I say, my colleague Michael is better with this, so why don't he handle it? I've also identified my skills, which many of you already know. My values, many of you already know as well. So when we talk about your unique value proposition, it's that thing that sets you apart from the others. It's not to say you are better than the others, no. It's just setting you apart. And it's important because we are all unique in our own way. Uniqueness does not mean we are super special. All of us are special, but we are just different. So the key point for us is to assess ourselves, identify our strengths, our passions, and our expertise, and also identify what sets us apart, and then craft a personal value statement. So at the beginning of our session, I put out a statement which says that it's not what you say matters, it's what others see. That is my personal value statement. So I believe that by the end of this section, we will be able to identify our strengths, our passions, and expertise, and identify what sets us apart from our colleagues and others even beyond GMA. And with that, we'll craft a personal value statement. We now look at crafting your personal brand story. Storytelling is one skill that every one of us need to master to execute. You don't necessarily need to tell your story like Eko will tell his story or Grant will tell her story. You have to tell your story the best way you can, because in communication, it's just you finding the right channel to say what is on your mind. Often we have people attempting to mimic others, which is fine. But if you want to mimic someone, ensure that you do it and do it well, just so that you don't come off as a liar. So we need to learn how to tell our story authentically and compellingly. So you've often heard of successful people tell the same story, so to speak, that the beginning wasn't easy. They had to do this, they had to do that, they had to do this, they had to do that. And you find out that the stories that they tell often win hearts and followers because they share these stories authentically and compellingly. So when we are sharing our stories, we need to tell it believably, okay? And our stories must be true stories, because if you lie in today's world of fact checking, people will find out, and that would harm the personal brand you have struggled to build. The key point in brand storytelling is the background, challenges, and achievements. Why are these important? People would want to know where you are coming from. And since everybody have challenges, sometimes similar challenges, people would like to hear your challenges and how you overcame them. And of course, after every challenge, when successful, comes with the bounties of achievements. And so people are intrigued when they hear these stories. We can attest to the fact that there are certain individuals whose stories we hear and we say to ourselves, these stories don't add up. They don't add up because there is no strong background to the story. The challenges are not clear, and the achievements are often shrouded in doubts or secrecy. And this establishes a firm foundation for the second key point of authenticity. Authenticity matters very, very, very much because it's what will build trust in you. If people doubt your story, then you will not have established trust between you and your audience. So you must ensure that there's some authenticity in your story. I often tell people that even if it is a lie, believe your lie before you tell it. Because if you don't believe your lie, then no one will believe you. So that is to establish that authenticity. Also, and the final point on key points is to tailor your story to your audience. There are certain stories that you can't tell or you can't share with certain audience. In fact, over here at GMA, we are all colleagues, and some of us are friends. However, there are certain stories about us that we can't tell our colleagues here or our friends here. It's the same principle. If you are sharing your story with an audience below 18 years, there are certain words you can't utter. There are certain details of your story you can't put out. So when you are engaging your audience, be it in a GMA or online, you must ensure that you understand your audience demographic and tailor it to suit them. This particular section of the key points, our politicians are very, very good at that. They know what to say to certain people at certain times. And it's strategic. It's to ensure that there's brand equity amongst the audience or the demographics of the audience, so that nobody is left behind. So if you are telling your story to say a group of science students, you must make sure that you tell it in a way that they will understand and appreciate your story. Building your online presence. This is one area that interests me a lot, because many people do not really understand the digital space. Now, so the objective of this section is for us to understand how to use these platforms and the strategies we can develop to build a digital brand. In today's world, we cannot talk about personal branding without talking about online presence. And so it's important that we understand and appreciate the requirements of online presence. Now, let's think about, or let's consider social media platforms like churches or clubs. And when I say clubs, I'm not necessarily referring to nightclubs. So those of us that become ear itchy when we hear clubs, this is just a little caveat. So let's say LinkedIn is Assemblies of God, Instagram is Pentecost, and Twitter is ICGC or ICGC. So when you go to Assemblies of God, the way they conduct themselves, the way they carry themselves, the church lineup, everything in Assemblies of God is different from Pentecost and is different from ICGC. However, there are certain similarities, but they are different. Now, why is this important? This is important because what you post in LinkedIn may not necessarily be suitable for Instagram, may also not necessarily be suitable for Twitter. So we need to understand these platforms and know how best to use them. So for instance, I have a LinkedIn account, but I do not use it often. I have a Twitter or X account, but I don't use that either. I often use Instagram or Facebook. And one would ask, why don't you use LinkedIn? Well, when LinkedIn first came, I believe I was one of the early users of LinkedIn. I was pretty much younger then, so I did not really appreciate it because I knew on the one side it's for professionals. And at the time, I had barely started forming a career, so I never really appreciated LinkedIn. Twitter, on the other hand, has always been noisy for my liking. I've never understood why people will just sit home and will be talking plenty. So I don't play in these areas. Where I play often is Instagram or Facebook. I'm conversant with these platforms, and so I know how to craft my messages there. I do have friends who are very active on LinkedIn, and in conversations, I got to understand that the messaging on LinkedIn, the language is far different from that of Instagram. I also have friends who are very active on X, and the impression I get also is that there are certain terminologies that they use over there that are new to me. And so in building your online presence with regards to your personal brand, you need to understand how these various platforms work, so you do not get it mixed up, sending the same messages on all platforms. What will happen is that on LinkedIn, it may be appreciated. On Instagram, it may be ignored. On Twitter, you may be mocked. So we need to understand these platforms and appreciate their role in helping us build our personal brand. We also need to be cautious of creating consistent content aligned with our personal brand. Why is this important? This is important because let's take Shatta Wale as a case study. Often people say he's not consistent with his content or his messaging. Why? Because today he will say one thing, tomorrow he will say another. So clearly, it creates the impression that this is not somebody that is consistent when it comes to content that he puts out. However, when you use the same individual as a case study, you would observe that the messaging in his inconsistent contents are very much aligned with his personal brand. He's an outlaw. So when you refer to our brand archetype, you would appreciate that Shatta Wale is an outlaw. And by the way, an outlaw is not a bad brand archetype at all. It's rather a very interesting brand archetype. But like I'm saying, the messaging is very much aligned with his personal brand. However, the content he puts out are not consistent. So to build a strong personal brand, your content must be consistent, and it must be in line or aligned with your personal brand. Don't go and post something about, say, Rastafarians when you are aware that it is not in line with your personal brand. When you do that, you cause confusion amongst the ranks of your followers, and within a short time, they may lose interest in you and you will lose them along the line. So you must be very consistent. Say the same thing you've been saying since 2018. Say the same thing in 2025. Say the same thing in 2030. If there's a cause for you to change your content or your message, let your followers know so that they become aware that there's going to be a change or there's a change. In other words, say today you think that the world is flat. If tomorrow you come into new knowledge that the world is round, acknowledge that indeed you said the world is flat, but upon receiving a new knowledge, you now believe that the world is round. So you don't come off as an inconsistent person. Now, we also have to talk about the importance of networking and engagement online. So there are some people who would never respond to your messages online. Even when you comment under their post, they will not mind you, all in the name of branding. That is a misconception. You are not branding when you are not engaging or networking online or even outside. There are individuals you meet at events, at parties, and they're always isolating themselves, all in the name of branding. If you are that type, please, you are not creating any strong brand. You are actually isolating yourself. Engage, communicate, network. Look, there are some celebrities or known people I know that if you comment under their post, unless they don't see it, they will respond. If you message them, they will respond, and they are so warm that people like to be around them. Myself, I like to be around them because they are warm and they feel human. if you decide to shove people away from you, it's just a matter of time. Like if a bad news about you drops, believe you me, it's going to be bad for you. But when you engage, you realize that when even there's a bad news about you, the people who have come to care about you will protect you and defend your honor, even if it is an honest mistake from you. So we have to be very, very intentional about engaging and networking online. Myself, I want to make a conscious effort on X to be engaging a lot more. Although that place feels very, very lonely, but hey, we'll get there. Maintaining consistency across platforms. The objective here is to ensure a consistent brand image across all touch points. Now, when we talk about brand touch points, what we mean is where you are seen, heard, and felt at all times or at certain times. But I would prefer all times. So for GMA, our brand touch points are online and physical. Physical is our offices. Online is our various platforms and sometimes billboards. So these are our brand touch points. But typically for any brand or any business, the brand touch points will be the physical location, print, that's newspapers, outdoor, that's billboards, and social or digital media. So wherever your brand can be seen, heard, or felt are your brand touch points. So how do we ensure that there's a consistent brand image? Remember at the beginning of this session, I mentioned that looks alone is not branding, okay? But in this session, we are hearing that there's something called brand image. Yes, because again, in the earlier session, we mentioned that branding consists of what? Name, logo, messaging, reputation, and position. So how do we ensure that we maintain a consistent brand image across all platforms? We must be consistent with our messaging, the tone of our messaging, and our visuals. What this means is, say we want to talk about, or you as a brand want to talk about stopping galamsey, you must ensure that your messaging about stopping galamsey now must be the same across wherever your brand is seen, felt, heard, or touched. So wherever, if I see you here at GME, I must see that same stop galamsey now. If I see you online, I must still see, perceive, and hear you talk about stop galamsey now. If I see you on a billboard, it must be the same. It shouldn't be that I see you here and you are talking to somebody about excavators and chamfine, and then you go online and you're talking about stopping galamsey. That is inconsistent, and that's not what we want. We want to be sure, we want to ensure that our messaging across all our brand touch points are consistent. Now, the tone. The tone is the pitch of your voice or your messaging. If you want to use a high or low tone, it must be consistent across all the touch points. So you shouldn't come to the office here and you sound so humble, like you can't even talk when they ask you a question. Your voice is so low, very respectful, so to speak. And then we go online and we go on your page and you're all over the place. And it'll be like, hey, na Portia, sana out here. Juma, you are some quiet, and you're online and you're all over the place. We must maintain consistency. When we want to talk about visuals basically is the appearance, the pictures, the videos. We must see some consistency. Now, we don't want to post something online which is blur and then somewhere else you post something that is sharp and crisp, or you want to post something today that is rugged and tomorrow. No, you must maintain consistency. So for instance, if you look at the brand archetypes, and I'll maybe at a later time, we will do a proper branding course where we look at the brand archetypes, delve deep into them, and say, if you select one brand archetype, for instance, the sage. With the sage, because it evokes wisdom, you must always look sharp. And when you take your pictures, you must always be, your chin should be high and everything, so that when somebody sees you, you come off as somebody who's very knowledgeable, who's very wise, and all that. So if that is a brand archetype you want to go with, in all your visuals, you must evoke that sense of a sage, or you must evoke that sense of a magician. Now, aligning your offline and online brand representation. Like I said, in the consistent messaging, tone, and visuals, you should not come to the office looking one way, acting one way, sounding one way, and when you go online, you are a different person altogether. When you do that, you do not create consistency. And often people who do not create consistency come off as people that cannot be trusted. Now, the role of personal presentation, that's appearance, speech, and behavior. So often, sometimes when I come to the office and I wear my suit, and my colleagues, some of you will be like, hey, why are you do you have a client meeting? I don't go client meeting. And this is to tell us that we are judged based on how we appear. There have been instances where I've been to offices where I'm wearing jeans and sneakers, and the receptionists see me and they assume I'm a graphic designer. There is one particular instance that made me actually realize that Ghanaians, especially, we take appearance very, very, very important. So we must ensure that whatever brand archetype we choose, or whichever way we want to be perceived, we must be consistent. We should not look sharp today, sharp tomorrow. Personally, I like to always dress freestyle, but GMA, my boss, Mr. Ernest Barton, will not allow me to be free. Fafa is always on my neck to ensure that I'm looking smart. Other than that, personally, I'm a freestyle person, but I also dress to suit the occasion. If it's a party, I make sure I dress appropriately or accordingly. How we talk, speech, must also be consistent with how we appear. We should not dress in one way and appear and speak in a different way. There are times you meet people and they be like, hey, na sana otie unim kasakra ana hey unim say unim kasasi. It's all because we appear in one way and we talk in a different tone. We must ensure that our appearance and our speeches are always, consistent. And I'm trying not to create the impression that all of us must dress in a certain way, act in a certain way, or talk in a certain way. No, personal brand is personal. If you look at Kubolo, one law of the Kubolo, for instance, he decided that he's going to walk barefooted. That is him. He decided that he's going to talk in a certain manner. That is him. Sarkodie has decided that he will dress in a certain manner, talk in a certain manner, behave in a certain manner. That is also him. It's a personal thing. But of course, you can mirror, you can imitate. But like I said, if you so desire to mirror or imitate, ensure that you do it and you do it well, so that you don't come off funny at the end of the day. Your behavior as well must be consistent. Don't be rude today and be nice tomorrow. Of course, there are times that we may not be in the mood, for one reason or the other, but it should not be a consistent theme with us. We must always ensure that we are consistent. And again, this consistency must run to all our touch points. In this session or this slide, we want to talk about managing our reputation. And this one, the PR people, this is their field. They understand it. So the objective here is to learn how to handle public perceptions and feedback. So you would observe that in the beginning or in the introduction that was given by my able colleague and friend Grant, which I felt like is a betrayal because a friend does not sell out a friend like that in public. But you realize that I made light of it. And yeah, why not? Because I believe she did not speak or made that statement with any malicious intent. So as someone working on your personal brand, public perceptions may not be equal with you. In fact, it's never equal with anybody. Some people will like you, others will not like you. Some will not like you even without you doing anything. They just don't like you. Okay, so they will always have something negative to say about you. How do you handle that? How should you handle this feedback? It's important that you do not flare up at all times when the perception isn't going your way or the feedback isn't what you thought it would be. Feedbacks are something for us to consider and improve on. The perception is the mirror of our image. Remember, I talked about impressions and perceptions. The impression is what we give, we create, and the perception is what is mirrored back to us. So you may want to be attempting to look like Elon Musk or Jay-Z or Kanye West or Dr. Baumia, for instance. But the perception that your target audience would have would either be positive or negative. They may look at you and say, you look like a Baumia knockoff. So what do you do with such perception? It's for you to go back to the drawing board and see how you're going to tweak things to improve that perception. And it's the same as the feedback. So with the feedback, say you put a content out about dialysis care, for instance, and there's an information you put out which is not accurate, and a follower or a critic comes in and says, what you just said is a lie or it's not accurate. How do you respond to such a feedback? You're not supposed to attack. You're not supposed to feel offended. It's for you to take that feedback, research on that feedback, and accept that, oh, what I put out there was a pure oversight or a mistake, and I retract. A classic example is something that happened between Mr. Gabriel Chidako and Madam Charlotte Osei. So not to bore you with politics, so Mr. Gabi put a tweet out and about Madam Charlotte, and Madam Charlotte came with a rebuttal and with facts to suggest that what Mr. Gabi put out there were inaccurate. He admitted with a follow-up tweet that, oh, what he put out there was indeed not accurate after doing his due diligence and checks. And he rendered an apology to Madam Charlotte Osei. So this is one of the ways you can manage feedback and improve your public perception. Had it been that due to ego, overbloated ego, he also came with a rebuttal and said he said something else and something else and something else. What would have ensued would be a legal case. Maybe he would have the time for it and the resources, but from a brand strategist point of view, it's just a mere waste of time. And I believe that the PR team will agree that if there's a chance for you to resolve a matter amicably, you'd rather do so than go about wasting your resources, no matter how many they are. So the key points, and I believe I might have touched them already, is the importance of reputation management. When you handle public perceptions well and feedbacks well, it boosts your perception, your reputation, it boosts your reputation. Mind you, these feedbacks and these perceptions that you'll be encountering are all part of your reputation management. Responding to feedback and criticism is a technique, it's an art that you need to study, you need to learn. And the best way to learn is to look at what and how others have handled feedbacks and criticisms. An example is what I've given you, that between Mr. Gabi and Madam Charlotte Osei. So as a brand strategist, myself, I have learned a thing. Should I encounter such, I would, quickly render an apology and I'll move on with my life. There have been instances I've posted something on my status and I've had feedbacks and I quickly take steps. Some of them, that these are just emotional sentiments and you will just, ignore and move on with your life. I used to post a lot about Christians on my status, and my Christian friends come at me and they're like, "Oh, Eugene, da 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 da." Immediately, I took steps to cease from posting such materials, so not to lose their friendship, because they are my friends, and it is not right that you deliberately or indeliberately offend such people. Recently, I realized that a chap, in fact, a kid, has been watching my status. So now I have to PG, I have to PG5 my status, so I don't post certain things that is not going to help the young man. So these are some of the things that we can do to manage our brand reputation. And the strategies for recovering from mistakes or missteps is the classic example I gave you about Mr. Gabi. Now, let's look at personal branding and career advancement, because at the end of the day, all that we are seeking to do is to create an opportunity for us to leverage on to move on to the next stage of our lives. And so it's important that what we are doing or what we are learning today will be purposeful and deliberate about it, because there's always a price at the end, good or bad. But I believe that we are looking at the positive side. So we are going to link personal branding to professional growth. The key points are how personal brands can open doors to career opportunities. So you are a member of your department. You have built your personal brand. You are managing your reputation. Your HOD, your colleagues, and everyone around you can tell that, oh, these days, the way you are carrying yourself about here, outside the office, when we meet outside the office, online, you've been consistent. There's some improvement in your personal interactions, your personal life, and everything. What will happen is that if there's an opportunity for you, or there's an opportunity out there, you will discover that your name will be the first to pop up. Okay. One of the things Mr. Barton often tell me is that he always encourages us to look sharp and smart, because if we don't know the time where he may call on us to join him for a meeting. So imagine that on a particular day, you are looking smart as usual because you have been consistent with your smartness. You have been consistent with your speech. You have been consistent with your behavior, and he wants somebody to accompany him somewhere. Whether you are around at the moment or not, chances are your name will be the first to pop up in his head, or a colleague will just, recommend that he takes you. Okay, because the trust has been established that if you are put in this position, you can execute and execute well. And it's not just about looking smart and sharp, but within your space where you have identified your strength. So say in the PR department, you have created a niche for yourself with sports communications. If there's anything sports, your HOD will not, resist the temptation of not, recommending that you should go, because you have created a niche for yourself. And there's evidence to back that claim. That, if you go to her socials or his socials, all he does is to talk about sports communication. Okay. Like Grant said in the introduction, I'm a political enthusiast. Why? Because you often find me engaged in political dialogues and debates. And so I'm sure that tomorrow, if there's an opportunity to serve in any political capacity, she will not hesitate to say, I recommend my friend Eugene. He's good and he can deliver. Okay. And so I have also, so an example of leveraging personal brand for career success. The personal one I know here is our current acting HOD for my department, our current HOD, Ifi. I've observed that part of the success is how he has crafted a niche for himself. He has crafted a brand for himself. So when an opportunity arose, it wasn't a very tough decision for management to make, to say, let him be the one to lead the team. And rightly so, he's showing his capabilities. So it's very important that we take our personal branding very, very, very seriously. And it's also very important that we continue to build and maintain relationships within our industry. Since no man is an island, we cannot survive on our own. Okay, so we need to continuously build and maintain relationships. We need to attend industry events. Even if you're not invited, if you can afford a ticket, go. If you can call somebody to get you access, attend. Myself, especially from now to December, you often find me at a lot of industry events, building and maintaining existing relationships, because relationships are the key. Okay, because the more people see you, the more you interact with people. When opportunity arises, they will call you first. And as a staff of GMA, be it in events, in broadcasting, in the digital PR, you cannot but take building and maintaining industry relationships seriously. Over the weekend last week, I was at an industry event and I met a couple of my colleagues at the VC side. Okay, but it's an industry event. So when we met, it was even one of them that said, he has heard about my session and he's going to ensure that he will partake. Okay, so if it's a PR events out there, look out for this event, participate, because you see, jobs will come to GMA through these relationships that you are building. Okay, there are some task that we've been able to achieve successfully here due to relationships that some of us perhaps already built before coming to GMA, or are built once we are GMA. So it's just, everything is just a phone call away. So it's important that we take this thing seriously to help GMA and to also help ourselves. So the next thing is to create an action plan and next steps. Okay. We need to look at, the objective here is to create a personal brand action plan. To do that, you need to set short-term and long-term goals for building your brand. Goals are very important, and as an individual, it's very important that we build these goals, and they always have to be short-term and long-term. It's unwise to only have short-term goals or have long-term goals only. You must always have a short and a long-term. So where do I want to see my personal brand in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months, in the next 24 months, in the next 10 years, 20 years? Where do I want to see myself in my personal brand? I've always said that at the age of 45, I would like to be like Idris Elba, where I'll just be DJing for as a career, because I started off as a DJ, but I've never taken it seriously. But often I do exercise my fingers, just so that I don't lose my skills, so that by the time I get to 40, 45, I'll be prepared to execute this long-term plan of my personal brand. So if you see me on my phone with my mobile DJ app trying to do one or two things, it's all part of my long-term goals for my personal brand. You also have to identify the resources at your disposal and your support networks. So the resources at your disposal can be phone, data, friends, money, whatever. These are the things that will help you achieve your short-term and your long-term goals. So you have to identify them and say, okay, these resources can help me achieve this goal, this short-term goal within 6 months, within 24 months. And what I will get out of it is what I'll use for the long-term goal. And your support networks, obviously, are your family, your friends, your colleagues here at the office, and any other community that you are part of. You have to identify them so that when you put content out there, these support networks will be there to retweet, share, like, comment, and all that to support you and help you grow your personal brands. And you have to take steps immediately after this training. And if you need this resource, I'm happy to share with you. So at this point, the floor is open for questions, and I'll do the best I can to answer. And I underline that best I can because it will depend on the nature of your question. If I have to go and conduct a further research and come back, I'll do that. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Eugene, for this awesome team on personal branding. The floor is open for questions.
Hi, Eugene.
Hello.
Yes. Kudos to you for an insightful presentation. I really enjoyed your presentation, except a few times I was left wondering because most of the examples you cited were either entertainment bias or political bias. I didn't get the corporate example view of which I believe that's the purpose of this presentation, since we are in a corporate environment. So for your presentation for today, if you can give us 1 or 2 corporate-related examples, I would really appreciate.
It's more, and again, that's the personal brand. The personal brand is about entertainment. It's actually, I'll come in like.
Okay, is there any other question, or I should go ahead and respond?
So you can go ahead and respond.
Okay, so Ms. Grant, I thank you for your message. So if I know you paid attention to the whole presentation, and I said that when it comes to personal brand, you have to identify your interest areas and build on it from there. My field of interest is primarily politics and entertainment. So pardon me or forgive me if it sounded or I came off as biased on that front. However, in my last slide, I have a few examples of successful personal brands, and one of them is Senior Hosi, who is a corporate person. We can attest that he has built a very strong niche for himself as far as personal brand is concerned. Because you're a woman and I know you're a woman's rights fighter, I think you will come at me again if I don't mention a woman. So for a woman, I think that we can say that Miss Emma Winani is also a very good example of an individual that has built or is building a very strong brand, personal brand. I personally follow her on X, and she's always talking about football. And I find her tweets sometimes hilarious. So if you ask me, these are 2 examples of successful corporate brands you can refer to. Thank you. Is there any question?
Yes, there's a question. So
Okay.
a colleague is asking, what strategies can I use to protect my personal brand?
Okay, so I believe that I have touched on a few of the strategies. We can just go back. These are the strategies, handling your public perception and feedback, maintaining consistency across platforms. We can also, so basically these two strategies would help you. So like I said in the presentation, you must be consistent. Okay, you must be consistent. And I like the word, I like the fact that he is talking about protecting. Okay, so now if you want to protect your personal brand, make sure that you do not lose consistency. And also make sure that when somebody comes at you with a feedback or somebody, so a perfect example is Ken Ashigwe. So Ken Ashigwe is a very fine gentleman, but for me personally, because he did not, I feel like when it came to the whole SIM card registration, he didn't do well for our subscribers because I saw him very protective of government and the government policy on that. I don't like it. And that's my perception. So I see him, I don't like it. Okay, that's my perception. But so if say he writes something online and I go at him, how he will respond to me would determine whether he's managing his reputation or personal brand well or not. Okay, so how you handle this situation would determine, in fact, if you let me say, if you manage it well, then it will help you protect your personal brand. Thank you.
Let me come in here to help if it's possible. So the question from someone asking about how to manage the reputation. I think one key thing we also need to look at is the need of continuous learning. Because if you do not have that continuous learning as an individual who has a brand to protect, you would lose it. In our industry, we find ourselves, especially digital and the PR industry, things keep evolving. And so if you do not keep up to date with you learning what is happening around you, in no time you lose, holding on to what you have, you might lose it, and then you are losing the essence of your brand that you've been able to create for yourself over this period of time. A classical example I can give would be Ellie Daniel Wilson, and I know some of you on this call would know him. He once happened to be the head of department for the digital and innovations team at GMA. Moved away to Pulse and now with Publicis. If you take a critical look at Ellie's journey, and then also from my personal conversation I've had with him, you can tell that this is somebody who is trying as much as possible to always stay ahead of the curve. He has a brand he's been able to create for himself, but he's not saying, oh, now I have the brand, I have the reputation now, so I'm not going to do much about it. He keeps learning, he keeps taking online courses. He's a very strict advocate for you having that personal education or personal learning to ensure that aside whatever that you're learning on the job, you would be able to meet up with industry demands as and when they come at you. And so for me, continuous learning should be one of the key things as individuals who want to create a brand or niche for ourselves. You would have to employ just to make sure that your brand stays intact and is more relevant. That's the key word, staying relevant here. So this be my additional message to what Eugene said. And before probably I move away, I think I'd like to commend Eugene for this wonderful presentation. I think you've done a very good job. And as someone who works with you and the team, I say I'm proud of you. So let's just continue with this good work and then keep any question or suggestion flowing through. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Efi. Eugene, I have one more question. So the person is saying, how do I handle negative feedback?
I can't hear you.
So
yeah,
how do I handle negative feedback?
Okay.
That's the question.
Okay. So the best for me, what I normally do is to listen and not to react. And so, because when you listen, you will hear. And when you are by yourself, you do assessments and ascertain whether there is merit in the feedback or not. If there is merit, you learn and you would add on and move on. If there is not, and you feel that it is an affront to your personality, you just find a very nice way to respond to that feedback. You don't have to go ballistics using unprintable words because you feel you have been offended or your ego has been bruised. Because sometimes certain people will come at you with these feedbacks to test you, and based on how you respond, they will form an opinion about you. Yesterday, I was in a vehicle and the driver was driving, recklessly. And I was angry, and I actually confronted him and said, listen, you're not driving professionally. And it almost turned into an argument. So I quickly paused and said, you know what, focus on the driving and take us home peacefully. Guess what? My phone fell in the side door, and this driver was very kind to help me remove it. In fact, he had to park his car, take screwdrivers and all that to get my phone for me. So imagine doing me talking about how he's driving, I go ballistics using unprintable words at him. And this happened shortly after. Do you think this driver would even bother to help me get my phone? No. And so I would say that we just have to listen, process it, take the good ones out, and the rest, if there's a need, not that if we feel there's a need to address it, we find a very nice way to address it. It can be online, it can be in person, but just use a very nice way to address it because you are building a brand. So always think like you are MTN, you are Apple, you are Elon Musk. Somebody telling you your iPhone 16 is bomb. It's not a good phone. As a CEO or as a PR head, are you going to go like, hey, go to hell? No, you don't do that. You find a nice way to address it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Eugene. Please, do we have any more questions to ask? Okay, if not, Eugene, I'd like to say a very big thank you on behalf of management and HR that we are very, very happy with this presentation and keep it up. I've also learned more from this and wish you all the best. In that case, if you don't have anything else to add, I'd like to bring this meeting to an end.
Okay, so this is actually my final slide. Is to give us examples of successful personal brands that we can identify. It's so I mean I was impressed when if we mentioned Ellie's name because he's part of the examples I intended to share with all of us. So it made me realize that okay, so I know my stuff. So these are examples of personal brands we can refer to. Amia Deborah, Kojo Sheldon, Ellie, Misty, Emma Wenani, Senior Hossi, Kojo Entry, and of course, I can't do this without mentioning myself. So thank you all for making time to, thank you all for making time for this session. And I'm hoping that I'll have an opportunity again for us to look at branding proper, where we will delve into the various aspects of branding. Thank you once again, and God bless you.
I also would like to chip in this short presentation is on YouTube. So in case you missed, you can go back and just rewind and listen to it. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to send it. Okay.